And I come to you this morning very with a heavy heart to really know that our students, what our children are doing here in Charlotte Mecklenburg. So I'm asking all of us if we can continue our prayers for advocacy, also for leadership, because we know that everything rises and falls in leadership here in Charlotte and across the country. And let's just focus on education, the reading literacy, and financial literacy, and accountability, and leadership, accountability, and making sure that we are monitoring and adjusting instructions throughout the process. We can do better than what we've done in the past. And I know that we've got all of our influential leaders here. We've got the Black Political Caucus, and certainly we could build on what Ms. Stevens has already developed. So I'm just pleading with all of you, let's just work together, and we cannot come another year with the failure rates of our African American children in this city. And please, I'm praying, and I'm hoping you'll pray with us as well. Thank you.
So at this time, Jennifer De La Jara, you were going to share some information. If it's anyone else that want to share anything, then do so. But we're going to open it up now for open discussion. And I think since Jennifer mentioned that earlier, we'll just turn it over to her.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. I really appreciate the opportunity just to share a few words about going back to school starting today. As it relates to the schools, I know there's a lot of speculation going on. You know, people have been asking, people have been emailing. The media sometimes has gotten a little bit off about whether or not, because of the rise in the COVID cases, if we will be going to virtual learning. And I just wanted to be very clear about a few things. The law that we're under right now that the General Assembly passed this past year is very different from the previous year in the way that they allowed virtual learning to count as instructional time. And this year we are required to review our staffing levels, staff that's on quarantine, for example, for each individual school on a daily basis. And the local school districts, and then we've delegated that authority to the superintendent, has the ability to put certain schools or certain classes, certain grade levels, depending on where we may have staffing shortages, which may become a real issue on virtual learning on a daily basis. So I just want to sort of set the stage for that, because that's what they will be doing. That's what they did all day yesterday, reviewing 180 schools, where we are, how many absences. There was 315 subs that were requested yesterday for today, just for reference. And there were days in December we had 800 requests for subs. So we're okay right now. We also have to look at transportation, and we're concerned about, you know, folks that are getting the virus as it spreads. And if we don't have bus drivers, that could impact schools. But we do not have the authority to go district-wide to remote learning. So it'll be a little bit different. I know the superintendent plans to hold regular updates on where we are as it relates to those staffing levels. And I just wanted to share that so we have clear information to the community, and also recognize that we've hired 215 what's called guest teacher positions, which are like full permanent subs. And most of those are at our 42 schools that are the lowest performing. And we did that purposefully so that those schools in particular had more stability during these tumultuous times in with the virus. So just a little update. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. As always, feel free to reach out if you have questions. And I appreciate what Dr. Howgray had to say. I can't agree more about how, as a community, we all need to come together and do everything we can, particularly right now, for our students. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Jennifer, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if it's true or not. That's why I'm asking. But I was told, excuse me, that when a teacher is out, they have to pay $50 or something for the substitute. Is that true, or is that just a rumor out of their pocket?
Yes, so it was true. And I will go actually after I finish speaking and see if I can pull it up so I can drop an article in the link. But the legislature just changed that. Um, so a change was just made, and it's my understanding that it's no longer true, but I don't want to misspeak on it. So I'm going to do a quick little check here just so I can put the latest information there.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking. It's a great question.
Jennifer, I put something in the chat. I saw online where the guest teachers only need a high school diploma. Is that acceptable in the lowest performing schools?
Well, I mean, we have guest teachers in other schools as well. I mean, ideally, we would love to have folks who have college degrees at all of our subs and all of those, but that's what they are. They're essentially subs, and they don't necessarily have to have them. You know, we've had a really hard time, I will say, attracting workers across the board. Whether they're subs, we're losing teachers. As we all know, we've lost a lot of teachers. So I welcome the community's involvement in trying to wrap our arms around all of our educators, and also the advocacy around pay. And we're trying to, we've been able to use some of our COVID funding to pass bonuses, but we're not going to bonus our way out of the educator crisis that we're in right now. And so I say that certainly we have a legislative agenda. We have some of our local delegation who have fought for funding, who have continue to fight for Leandro funding. Our teachers are struggling, and the pipeline is bleak. Educator pipelines dropped 35% in the past few years, meaning students that don't even want to enter the field of education, as the legislature has cut benefits and master's pay and all of these extra incentives. So we are at a critical mass, and I hate to be stark and bleak, but I feel like it's going to get worse before it gets better. Is it acceptable? I mean, no, in many ways it's not. It's absolutely criminal. It's absolutely criminal what we do to our students, and not providing a sound basic education to the students in North Carolina. But we're going to have to, I think, come together to fight this in new and creative ways, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of movement. And I would welcome more conversation about how we can do that together.
Is it possible that we can switch some teachers around so that we could have some more qualified teachers in certain subject areas like English and math and those subjects? Because some schools are fully staffed.
Yes, well, there are certain incentives that are offered. We also, Miss Mary, I know we've talked before, we run into a tough situation where certain teachers have been at certain schools for a long time, and certainly opportunities are made available, and teachers are encouraged and sometimes incentivized to go to other schools. And we also run the risk of them hopping over to South Carolina or hopping down to Union County as well. And so it is a delicate balance of trying to encourage teachers to be at the right schools, and also not force them necessarily, because teachers don't like that either, and we want to respect their wishes as well. So it's a difficult challenge. I wish we had a giant pool from which to choose and could do even more.
And I only bring that up because it is a major concern in the low performing schools, and it shows in the test scores, because how can they have adequate test scores when they don't have adequate teachers? And I'm just concerned that we are not utilizing our teacher pool as we should. We should assign teachers to schools where they are needed, and they can either go or leave. So
you would advocate?
Like I have to be an advocate. I really feel like I have to be an advocate for those schools, And I really hate to see, I've been in lots of schools in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and I can see the difference. And I just think it's that the school board or superintendent or whoever should be bold and say that we're going to look at our teacher pool. This is where all our strengths are. These are our weaknesses, and this is where we're going to place people. It's that way in business. And I just feel like I'm being an advocate. That's all. I'm just being an advocate.
And I appreciate that, Miss Mary. I do. You know, I respect you so much. But we're not a business. And what I mean by that is oftentimes people say that, well, you need to run it like a business. If I were able to run the school system like a business, I would give all of our employees a 20% raise tomorrow. Because as a business owner, I have the ability to do that. I have the ability to make the tough calls and utilize the funds. And we are, have a legislature at this point, in my personal opinion, that's hostile toward public education, and other lawmakers or policymakers or funders that sometimes become hostile. And so we literally are losing teachers to South Carolina right now, which is a shame. North Carolina used to be the beacon, as you know, of education in the Southeast. And right now we look at sometimes the exit interviews and they're skipping over to South Carolina because they make more money. And so I hear what you're saying. You're not wrong. You're absolutely right. There's also this real talent of pipeline that is fleeing us right now, and we are at a crisis. So I don't know necessarily if that's the right approach. I know many people suggest that to the superintendent, and he's tried to do certain things to incentivize, but then we run the risk of, like you said, they can leave, but can they? I'm not sure, because I don't want to lose all of our teachers also. So it's a huge battle that we're fighting on a daily basis. But I hear you, and I acknowledge the concern that you have.
Well, what is the reason that they don't want to go to those schools? What is the real reason that they really don't want to go to those schools?
I'm not sure, but I will follow up with you to get a better idea of what is reported out, of why that may be. I will make that commitment to you to follow back up.
Because as a teacher, I thought that we all made a commitment to teach our children regardless of race and all of that. I just felt like as a committed teacher that we would be willing to help where needed. That's all. That's all I'm going to say. I just felt like
I understand, but
I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying.
I know you're not.
Looking at the whole system, and I would prefer that the teachers would be real teachers at heart, and not just to be at a certain school.
Yeah, ma'am.
Jennifer, I have a question. Is this a Charlotte issue, since we're uniquely so close, placed so close to the South Carolina border, and the state isn't? I know the legend has it the state hates Charlotte, but is this one of those things where, being that Charlotte's so close to South Carolina, that we're just in a pickle that we can't figure out?
I mean, that's certainly part of it. We also have this issue with Virginia. Virginia pays more as well. So I was speaking with some of our school psychologists the other day, and they were talking about how difficult it is to attract school psychologists into North Carolina, because Virginia, for example, they pay starting out $10,000 more. So our counties along the Virginia border also, this was their anecdotal information about some of the advocacy work they're trying to do, even with DPI in Raleigh, to get them to hire someone that will actively try to recruit more school counselors and certified psychologists, to work here in North Carolina. And you're right, there is direct retaliation. There's no other way to say it. In this latest budget that was passed right before Thanksgiving, there were extra funds that were allocated to 95 counties in North Carolina to supplement teacher pay, and 5 counties were left out. 5 counties that have majority Democratic county commissions. And it's the county commission that then turns around and supplements our pay for our students. So news was just made that Winston-Salem Forsyth just increased their teacher supplement. Well, they were able to do that because the state just handed that county more money in order to do it. And then Guilford next door, they said, no, you don't get it. So the state absolutely, in my opinion, is playing favorites with who they incentivize, how they go about funding, and to leave out 5 of the largest, more urban districts and not give us that extra money that we could turn around and funnel to pay our teachers to incentivize them. I think it's problematic. Now, I understand that some of these smaller rural counties have no tax base. They are struggling. I'm not dismissing their struggles. They have real struggles in these rural areas. But it's also exponentially more expensive, as we all know, to live here in Mecklenburg. So I don't think that we should have been excluded. And I think we should be paying very close attention to what's happening in Raleigh.
Okay,
So,
Yvette,
hi,
you have a
this is
question?
Yvette. Let me jump in just a minute. I actually have a lot to make. I am interested in whether or not the General Assembly did address the issue of dollars that has to be paid, and that's if a teacher does not have any paid leave, they actually have to pay for a sub, and it's only $50 because my second point is that the level of expectation of not only our students, but the substitute teachers has also been degraded. So you only have to have a high school degree. And that's because for a long time, and I don't know if they still have that contract, but CMS had a contract with Kelly Services. Kelly Services, and I know this because I once temped through Kelly Services, they paid, if you were not licensed, they paid you $80 a day, and that was regardless of whether or not you had a college degree or a master's degree or whatever degree. And if you were licensed, they paid you $100 a day. Now, I know for myself that equated to about $11 an hour, which we know that most people, there's no way that a teacher or substitute teacher, and so that's not attractive to anybody. I can go to McDonald's and make more there than I can, substitute. And as much as I love our students, I still have to live, right? So one of the issues, and I think the point that Ms. Mary was trying to make is, we need to run it like a business. Not that we need to run CMS like a business, but we need some alternative measures. We need a different plan, a strategy of utilizing resources in a different way, of redistributing resources so that we can at least bring our students up to an acceptable level in reading and math. I mean, hitting those 2 hard at the very least, especially since we've lost about 18 months, almost 2 years of instructional time, of real instructional time. And I'm also concerned about the fact that, if we get hit again and we have to all go virtual and get locked down again, is there somebody preparing a plan?
Yes.
I mean, I think about that nationwide.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, there is a plan. The superintendent sent out some information last night on how we're going to have to evaluate all of these different schools and what that will look like, and the supports around trying to prevent that from happening in many ways. But I will tell you, I'm also getting a lot of emails from families that want us to go virtual. So it's very complicated. For every email I get that says, don't you dare go virtual, I get another one that's like, if someone dies, there's going to be blood on your hands, sort of thing. And so there's divergent views on, whether or not, virtual was right, or whether we should do it again. So that piece is complicated, but the superintendent has put out information. You will be seeing more information on how we are addressing Omicron. And actually also, I would even offer, if not here on the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday morning forum, at another venue, to gather a group to share some of the more detailed information about what we are doing, how we are addressing literacy and math, like you said, and also what some of our plans are. In fact, I'm having a meeting with our CFO on Friday to lay out the budget allocations that I think we need, because there's some things that we already know. Like if you listen to Dr. Monroe Richardson, he's been on here, we know that students are 4 to 10 times more likely to see significant increases in literacy skills if they're given 20 to 30 minutes of small group or private or individual instruction a day. So in my mind, that's teaching assistants. That's extra folks that even if they're not working with a small group, that are covering the classes so that the certified teacher actually has time to get to those kids, that can sit down and do that individualized instruction. I think that's what Dr. Hal Gray was referring to, that individualized instruction to meet them where they are. We don't have the teaching assistants and the extra staff, the people that we need in order to do those very, very basic things. And so that is what I am advocating for. It is what we are looking at our budget to set forth, to see how we can do the things that are not rocket science, but are part of the science of reading. Because we're not really meeting those basic needs. So I agree with you. I'm just trying to help us understand in a global perspective of, I think we need radical change. Get those certified people that are paid well, that are respected in the classroom, teaching assistants back in the classroom, and let's actually teach the kids to read.
Okay.
I agree with you, Jennifer. Just one more comment.
Lisa wanted to make a statement, and Pat Campbell, and we have about 10 minutes.
I appreciate that so much. I mean, I was just going to underscore what Jennifer was saying. I mean, the bigger picture really is the General Assembly. I mean, they are shirking their constitutional duty to provide a sound public education to North Carolina children. And it is just unconscionable. And so, but right now, the Republican leadership is in charge and they're not really going anywhere. And so I, again, have to highlight the 2022 midterms are so important, not just in Mecklenburg County, okay? We're pretty blue, but across the state, we have to reach out and try to get other representatives from other areas elected. Because if they get back the supermajority, we have nothing. The supermajority, as you all probably realize, means that they can pass whatever they want and the governor can veto it, but then it goes back to the legislature and they have the votes to override that veto. So it's like a blank check that they basically can do whatever they want. And so right now, that's all we're clinging to. That's all we have, the ability to sustain the governor's veto. And so we really have to all be educated about that fact and try to help, not just, we need to help our local elected officials and everything, but we also have to keep in mind people outside of Mecklenburg County that need our help. And that's a little bit, you know, against my race. I mean, I have a race, but I'm talking about people outside of Mecklenburg County who need our help. So I just throw that out there.
Okay, Pat, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, Jennifer, when you talk about the education of our children, my biggest concern is that the curriculum changing, the kids get adjusted to this and then you change it to something else. Why are you constantly changing the curriculum when you're not allowing it to work? And why have they taken phonics out of school? Phonics is the best way to teach a child how to read. This sight to see and the lack of vocabulary words and reading. And I understand, like you said, funds are being taken away and small groups are needed, but you have a lot of new teachers that are in there who don't know how to control their classroom, and to expect them to come into a classroom, and children know if you're green and they take advantage of it. A substitute is nothing but a babysitter. And if the teacher hasn't set out a plan and knows her classroom and puts that, don't want to say threat, but that threat to have the children be in line, they're going to take advantage of it. So why is the curriculum changing? Because I volunteered at Cochrane and they told me that in 6 years they had gone through like 4 different curriculums. How can you expect a child to learn if you're constantly changing the curriculum and before they get a chance to grasp it, you've changed it? Because I can't remember the one curriculum that America jumped on the bandwagon and they threw it in schools. But the way that curriculum was set up, if you didn't get in it from kindergarten to go all the way through, it didn't work because it was a build on concept. And if you're constantly changing curriculums, how do we expect our children to grasp it and grow?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Pat, for that question. I think you're referring to the standards around what was Common Core. But what CMS did a few years ago, and this was before my time, and certainly Ms. Erica Ellis Stewart, if you want to chime in, of course do. But it's my understanding that they did a district-wide evaluation of all of the curricula that was being used. There were many different resources, and what they came back from that about 3-4 years ago was an understanding that some of our teachers felt like they were following the standards using the different pieces that curricula they had piecemealed together, but indeed they weren't. They weren't actually meeting standards, and so this whole process ensued of trying to find a curriculum that all students, and many times there were questions about bias in that, I must say as well. This sense of, well, maybe these students can't learn at this level, so let's teach this curriculum. So part of the new curriculum that was purchased 3 years ago was a means to provide standards aligned, high rigor curriculum to all students so that they also had the opportunity to learn at that higher level. And then embedded within that is certainly interventions. So if students, aren't quite there, that the teacher has opportunity to scaffold and to do small group work and intervention work to get them to that point. The goal being that with the same curriculum provided to all students, then we were providing the same high rigorous opportunity for all students. So I don't see that curriculum now changing anytime soon because there's been a massive investment made in the K-8. I'm talking specifically about the ELA curriculum, and then there's been a new math curriculum. And then we've also gone through an extensive change in our high school curriculum and added more literature and different books that are reflective of diverse voices, and got student input actually into that as well in order to make sure that we were providing culturally relevant teaching. So I understand what you were saying. There have been many changes. Some of that, I understand, comes from the State Board of Education when they change standards, and then we are required to then adopt new standards. Then some of that is the local district making choices to invest in certain curriculum. But I don't see that changing now that those larger investments have been made. It's now about the professional development around it, improving it to make sure that it's being taught district-wide with fidelity and with the intention that it was meant, and helping our teachers to be even more effective. Also, I will say that our teachers are going through a science of reading. I can't remember the exact name of the program that was purchased through DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, but they're actually being given, so letters training, LETRS training, which is science of reading, and it does include phonics. There's specific phonics training within that to make sure that our K-3 teachers in particular are really going through a rigorous training this year, and that was pushed through by the state superintendent of schools and the Department of Public Instruction. And it was part of the reason why we had an extra teacher work day, because it was so much professional development that our teachers were really stressed out this year on how they were going to be able to accomplish all of that. While that's a good thing, they didn't provide us any extra time in the calendar to be able to allow our teachers to learn it. So we had to make a change because we do want our teachers to be trained on the latest information around the science of reading.
We're at 9:56, so I think that we've covered a lot as far as the school is concerned. And Jennifer, thank you again for sharing all of this information. But we will be back with you on next Tuesday with the Tuesday Morning Forum, starting again at 8:30.